Good evening and welcome to Personal Finance. I'm Kukuletu Cele. Now, yesterday we spoke about setting a solid financial foundation in your 20s. Craig Gradidge from Gradidge-Mahura Investments joins me now to look at the next 2 decades. That's to build on and protect your wealth in your 30s and 40s. Craig, good to have you with us this evening. Maybe let's take a look at the typical 30 or 40-year-old, the key objectives and things that they're dealing with in their lives at the moment.
Yes, good evening, Gugu. Yeah, so someone in their 30s and 40s, often newly married or married for a few years with young children, kind of starting to acquire assets more and more, so the house, the car. If they've managed their money well in their 20s, they may have paid off their car and, into settling the debt on their house. Certainly in the South African context, many of them would be part of what's known as the sandwich generation.
Maybe tell us a bit about that, because some people aren't familiar with that term.
Yeah, so the sandwich generation is that generation of people sandwiched between their parents and their kids. So they're having to offer financial support to their parents, as well as, the normal support that they are expected to provide for their kids. The history of our country, many of our parents were not offered economic opportunities which would then have allowed them to build up a retirement fund. So now that would fall on people in their 30s and 40s quite a bit. And so that's a significant personal financial planning requirement, is making sure that they're able to deal with the challenges of being part of that sandwich generation. And then, for many people in their 30s and 40s, having quite a bit of debt is certainly part of it. But I think a key feature is the fact that their income growth tends to be at its peak during their 30s and 40s. So a professional, in your 30s, you got 10, 15 years working experience, kind of your late 30s, and, you're moving up the corporate ladder. And so incomes tend to run quite a bit ahead of inflation. So dealing with this changing income is certainly a key financial planning issue for people in their 30s and 40s.
Is that then the starting point? Because now you've got all this additional funds, despite the additional responsibilities, for you to kind of get your game plan in order.
Yeah, so I would say the most important advice I could give to someone in their 30s and 40s is to ensure that they are running their money with a budget. So the basic budget still remains the foundation of good money management. I read a Barclays Wealth report a couple of years ago where they surveyed their ultra-high net worth clients. So these are people with $10 million and above in net assets. And the report found that the research found that over 66% of those ultra-high net worth individuals manage their money with a budget. So budgeting, often the simplicity of running a budget gives away its potency and its power in terms of managing your finances. I sit with my budget at the beginning of the year, and having young children, I get the letters from the school, see when I need to pay what, and I can, on my budget for that month, March, I know I need to make a payment. In July, I know I need to make a payment. So I can run the budget for the entire year.
Sticking with the plan.
The budget it's a rich source of information. I can see, am I living within my means? What am I spending my money on? And, it's how you execute your financial, your financial plan. You execute it through your budget. So you want to save for retirement. Well, is there a retirement annuity contribution in your budget? Are there investments in the budget? Where are you spending your money? Is it on consumption? Is it on assets? So all of this is feedback that your budget gives you when you start using it regularly and you have the discipline of running your finances according to the budget.
So it's an honest outlook, and it's what you do with that information.
Exactly.
Maybe if we take a look at the role of credit and debt, living a debt-free life, is that possible within your 30s and 40s? You alluded to the car, to the house as well as having some kind of investments.
Yeah, I think we were, certainly my generation, and I'm in my early 40s, we were scared into settling debt very quickly. You know, debt was a bad thing, it's a 4-letter word. And what I've learned over the years is that if you use it responsibly, debt is actually a very powerful wealth creator. And it's understanding the cost of debt. And if I'm paying 8% to borrow money, but I invested in something that gives me a 20% return, I'm creating wealth. You know, and if I do that often enough, I can create more and more wealth over time. So debt is not necessarily a bad thing. It's how people have used it. And they've used it, I think TPN did a research study about 6 years ago, where they found that the reason people use debt, 5 of the 7 reasons people borrow money is for consumption-related matters. So we're buying groceries, we're paying for the kids' education, we're buying clothes on clothing accounts, and that's all consumption. And it's often very expensive debt.
Exactly.
So we're incurring this debt at 25-30% interest, and we are buying a depreciating asset, or we're buying something that we're going to consume. And because you've consumed it, you then need to buy it again. You know,
exactly.
Clothes go out of fashion, people go out of shape, and so they have to buy more clothes.
Keeping up with the Joneses in many ways.
Keeping up with the Joneses, they want to be fashionable, and if it's going to cost you 25% for that, you know, you're wasting money. But if you're going to use debt to buy a house, secondary property, or a second property, or you're going to buy a car which is going to help you generate income, then that's good use for debt, or maybe to make an investment in a business or something.
There's also something of interest that you alluded to earlier on, estate planning in your 30s and 40s. How vital is that? Because I think it's often something people forget.
Yes. Look, I think the most critical action that someone in their 30s and 40s should take would be to ensure that their incomes are protected. So because your incomes are growing, and they're growing at such an alarming rate, or at a rate far higher than inflation generally, particularly if you're a professional, and you've got your changing dynamics of being married and having kids and all of that, and potentially supporting aging parents, that income is critical. So that in the event that something happens to that income, death, disability, disease, retrenchment, catastrophic event, your incomes need to be protected.
How important is it, though, to choose the right product? Because not all of those things might happen to you, and to ensure that you're not throwing your money into an empty bin, a dark pit, where you're not sure that you'll get a return on your income there. How critical must one be when coming to those kind of products?
Yeah, with insurance, you know, and typically you would insure your income. So life cover, disability, dread disease, retrenchment, short-term insurance for your assets, medical aid. I don't know why people look for a return there, because it's not an investment. You're protecting against an event that may or may not happen. Okay, and that's the value of it. Certainly I've got dread disease cover, but I wouldn't like to be hit by a dread disease. So we take it out for the peace of mind that it gives us, and the fact that it ensures that our dependents can continue living the lifestyle that they've become accustomed to. So that in the event of our passing, in the event of us being struck down by a dread disease, the financial implications are not as dire.
Exactly.
Okay. So protection of income is critical. The second point, which comes to your question, is then the structure of your estate.
Yes.
So your estate planning, that becomes quite critical as well, particularly where you have young kids. So again, personally, I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. It would be very unwise of me to leave money to them, you know, and being under the age of 18, they can't own assets in any case. So as part of my estate planning, I've got a testamentary trust, which is a trust that is set up in your will. So your will becomes the trust deed effectively. Okay, so I do not incur the costs of having a trust while I'm alive, and it is only created on my passing. Okay, and so the assets would then go to the trust, and the kids become income beneficiaries together with the spouse. And on the kids reaching a certain age, the trust can be unwound and they can receive their assets when they're now adults and they're able to be responsible with those assets.
Tell us about the benefits of that, because if you didn't have that in place, then surely it would be an administrative nightmare.
Yeah, so firstly, I mean, if you die intestate, which has been dying without a will, you're saying to the state, look, all this balance sheet that I've built up, you decide what happens with it. And you don't want that to happen. You want to be able to ensure that those assets go where you want them to go. But in terms of a testamentary trust, if you do not have that and you die while your kids are young, then maybe that goes to your spouse, who then gets married to somebody else who has kids, and suddenly everything that
your money's feeding the nation, maybe
is and some people say, well, we're going to leave it to my brother or my sister or whoever, and as much as we love them, some people that we trust, suddenly they're getting a lump sum of money into their bank accounts, and wiring goes loose upstairs somewhere.
Exactly.
And so a testamentary trust just protects against that, where you put your trustees in place, and you choose trustees that ideally would have the same value system as yourself, and would value education over consumption, for example, and prioritize the kids' schooling and prioritize the education, and making sure they participate in sport, and so that the money is properly spent on the development of your children and the protection of your family's lifestyle.
Craig, it's almost time for us to say goodbye, but maybe if we can sum up those 5 points very quickly for the viewers at home, so that they have a getaway kit to ensure that their 30s and 40s, they're able to navigate their way through finances.
Yeah, so I would say the most important thing is run your affairs with a budget. It remains the foundation of good money management. Ensure that your incomes are protected against whatever could disrupt those incomes. Get your estate planning affairs in order. Your retirement planning is critical. So I would say that would be point number 4. And that's important to make the sandwich generation a one-generation phenomenon, so that you don't become dependent on your kids when you reach retirement. And then in 5th place, ensure that you have an emergency fund in place. Life has a funny way of happening, and an emergency fund is that buffer to make sure that your balance sheet is not destroyed by unforeseen events and things like that.
Exactly. Craig, thank you so much for your time today and the 5 things that you've highlighted for us. Good to have you with us as always. That's it for Personal Finance though this evening. Many thanks to Craig Gradidge from Gradidge-Mahura Investments. Do remember that we want to hear from you, so get in touch with us by tweeting any of your comments to @CNBC Africa using the hashtag Finance410, or even to myself @Kukumfupi on Twitter. Until tomorrow evening, it's goodbye for now.